All right. Well, in today's Qualified at the Intersection, we're going to do another story behind the story. And today we're going to freestyle it a little bit because we're going to be responding to some of today's news stories. Well, one of today's news stories. For those of you who don't know, the president of South Africa came to the United States. He brought some South African golfers and some people from his administration to meet with President Trump. And President Trump proceeded to hijack the conversation and ambush him on live television and accused the South African government based on some photos that were printed on paper and a YouTube video as proof of a white genocide in South Africa because an opposition leader in South Africa had said some negative things. And the president of South Africa was working so hard to be diplomatic and continue this as a civil conversation. But Donald Trump clearly didn't want that. He wanted to bring the concept of a white genocide, not just to the Oval Office, not just to the national stage, but to the international stage. And this supposed white genocide, that's the story behind the story we're going to talk about today. So the story up front is we're concerned about immigration, we're concerned about illegal diversity, equity, inclusion, we're concerned about women not having enough children, but all of that is the front story. The story behind the story is what Donald Trump put forth today in the Oval Office, which is the idea that there is a literal and figurative white genocide going on around the world. This had been a fringe right-wing white supremacist theory for years, that interracial marriages, allowing women positions of authority and power, being equal in the workplace with African Americans and other people of color was going to lead to a literal and figurative genocide of white people. And it is that is what is motivating everything that is going on today in the White House. And Donald Trump so accurately showed that today when the president of South Africa said, well, you know, there is criminality in our country. More black people die than white people. Donald Trump really came close to saying in so many words, who cares? He said, oh, well, they're not farmers. They don't matter, is essentially what he was saying, because what he is most concerned about is being a Christian white nationalist soldier for this supposed white genocide. Now, it's not about South Africa even. It's bigger than that. I mean, in South Africa, there is a lot of criminality, as the president said. Many people are killed. Majority are black. There are a few white people killed, that's true, but there has been no wholesale confiscation of white farmland, although they got the land through whole-scale confiscation of black people's farmland. And, you know, the president of South Africa could have shown right-wing rallies in the United States and asked Donald Trump if there was a genocide against African Americans. He could have done that, and Donald Trump would have flipped his lid. Because his whole theory of the case is that diversity, equity, inclusion, white women not having enough children, immigration is leading to the figurative and literal genocide of the white race. And Elon Musk and Donald Trump have both said things that can only lead one to believe that they are eugenicists, meaning they believe in the gene theory of intelligence, that their genes as white people, and a specific type of white people at that, they have superior genes that make them entitled to rule. There is a white Christian nationalist, I don't know if he's a pastor or a thought leader or what he is, but who has said no body should be in leadership who is not a white Christian in this country. And these are the kind of people who now have free access to people in power. And when you look at immigration and you say, well, wait a minute, if you're saying the United States doesn't have children, there are people who are having children, then you're seeing the story behind the story, because they don't want those people's children. They want white children. And even if that's not being said explicitly, it's clearly being said implicitly, because you are getting rid of people who have children and want to be a part of this country. And then, in order to put, I don't even know if you would call it a fine point on the matter, or if you would say it's a pie in your face, in your face. I mean, this issue with bringing over the 50 or so South Africans is like exclamation point to say, are you guys dumb and deaf and unable to see what I'm doing? I'm doing it right in front of your face. And, you still have the media saying, well, asking why is he doing this? They either refuse to or unable to put this all together. That the push around immigration, removing some people from the country, even people who have green cards, people who haven't done anything wrong, questioning American citizens at the border, while bringing in people who are part of a group of people who confiscated the land of Black Africans, who have been responsible for crimes against humanity against Black Africans. And one of the people he brought over has allegedly had on his social media racist, anti-Semitic, and homophobic text messages and tweets, or not tweets, but other social media. And when they asked him about it, he allegedly said, oh, I was on medication. Now, we are to understand that a Palestinian American student who walks across a campus at Columbia is kidnapped off the street. Actually, I don't want to say she's Palestinian American because I'm not sure of her ethnicity, but a foreign national student in Columbia who's walking across the campus was kidnapped off the street because she might have been a part of a demonstration they deem anti-Semitic. But a man from the apartheid regime, historically from that regime, is found on social media to make anti-Semitic comments, but he was given, part of the group, a first-class flight to the United States and welcomed personally. Now, the fact that this white group was welcomed like that, and groups of Black and brown people are being hunted out of the country, I don't really know how much clearer they could be. And when you look at what they're doing around diversity, equity, inclusion, you see what a red herring this DEI backlash was. And I don't want to hear that again. I question and will challenge the legitimacy of people who push this narrative as a narrative related to why we are in the situation we are in today. And I will urge you to question those people. What is their real motivation? Because anybody with eyes or intelligence can see diversity, equity, inclusion has nothing to do with where we are today, other than that it represents one of the fears of this concern about white ethnogenocide. And this is a long-standing fear. At the end of the Civil War, in the South, there were a lot of African Americans. It wasn't 50-50, but say it was 40% African Americans, formerly enslaved folks, and 54% white, or something like that. There was a deep concern that if they didn't do something, they would be overrun. So that's when you start seeing more white ethnics coming into the South. This is a cyclical pattern in the United States. And this is about even these executive orders and these lawsuits. Stephen Miller, his legal group, tried to file a complaint against NASCAR because they have a program to encourage and show young African-American people what pit crew jobs are in NASCAR. He said it was discriminating against qualified white people. There are 300 pit crew members in NASCAR. This program resulted in five Black folks. So based on that reasoning, what we are to understand is there should be either no Black people, or after all the white people have jobs, if there's a job left, maybe one Black person can have that job. And that seemed, and that person has to prove their ability at a much higher level than anybody else. That seems to be the working principle. And this concept, again, goes all the way back to Andrew Johnson. Yeah, that's somebody that Trump loves. And Andrew Johnson made the first reverse discrimination claim in 1866, that anything that offers support and redress to African Americans was so offensive to white people as to be discriminatory against them. So to have the president of the United States take mainstream, he took it mainstream, this theory of white genocide, which is directly tied to the white replacement theory. I mean, those who believe in Nazi ideology must have been cheering today to see this happen. And to bring a world leader and shove some papers print out from who knows where. We know there are allegations of them using Photoshop and changing things, and to show a random YouTube video to a world leader, not in respectful conversation, but to insult. And he would have freaked out if the president of South Africa had said, well, we could look at the same and the way you treat African Americans here and say the same, but he would have lost it. And so what this tells you is that the story behind the story as it relates to immigration, the story behind the story as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, pushback or anti-DEI, the story behind the story as it relates to trying to force women, really white women, to have more children and functionally off their jobs is about this idea of white genocide. And that is what television, newspapers, everybody ought to be covering, because this concept is a threat not just to people of color in the United States, but ultimately to white people, as it has always been. These types of ideologies don't end well for any of us. So that is the story behind the story in today's news related to the just outrageous and insulting incident in the White House with the president of South Africa. And I encourage you to look deeper at stories and share this information with others, because well understood, well known is well armed. And if we keep chasing these rabbits, these fake rabbits around, well, if we just change how we do DEI, we won't get backlash. Or if we just have less immigrants come here the right way, they won't. No, none of that is true. It's not true. Because it's not about those things. It is about just what the president said today, the fear of white genocide, literally and figuratively. And that is the story behind the story.